G'day everybody. Video today, this is my Ram 3500, but if you're in the market for a 1500 in Australia, we're going to talk about why right now might be the time that you want to consider one. First things first, if you have a look at the other videos that we've done here, one of the videos I've done is on the 1500 specifically, and it's why I didn't buy one, okay? And there's a number of reasons why I didn't buy a 1500, but there are a few things that you want to keep in mind here regarding the 1500 in terms of if you're thinking about buying one, there's a couple of things coming that might influence your decision. Now, the US truck market in Australia, particularly converted trucks, has really boomed in the last few years, and it's principally been led by the Ram 1500. And if I was going to be even more specific, the Ram 1500 Express. Why is that? Well, a number of market forces are in play here. Previously, if you were looking for a dual cab utility and you wanted the North American Ute, you knew you were going to be paying six figures. You know, and how far into the six figures you went depends on specification, depends on the truck. It really depended on what boxes you ticked. However, you were going to be paying six figures. But the Ram Express came along for less than that. It launched drive away, not six figures plus on roads, drive away for $79,990. Now, if you scroll back to 2000, say the era 2000 to about 2005, 2006, Ford actually released a factory made in South America, right-hand drive F250. Okay, and they actually did the F350 as well, but F250 in two specifications. For a little while they did three engines, for a little while they did two engines, and they sold that for a good amount of time. They sold some, a few numbers, and then by the end of its run it kind of got a little bit harder to sell. But dual cab utilities back in 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, they weren't really the en masse purchase that they are today. And the reason of that is because they were a big compromise. Dual cab utilities back then were a big compromise compared to a family wagon. And if you don't believe that, have a look at like a Commodore station wagon or a Toyota Land Cruiser, Toyota Prado, from that era compared to the dual cab utilities they were selling at the time. So something like a Mazda Bravo, Ford Courier, the Hilux of that era. The RA Rodeo had just taken over. The TF was still around in a bit after 2000, then the RA Rodeo came in. They were a big compromise compared to the ways in terms of comfort, in terms of appointments, in terms of ride. If you were going to put your kids in a dual cab back then, there was a compromise on comfort. It just was, and it was quite a significant one. They weren't, the big leap forward in comfort, in NVH, in features was to come in about 2005, 2006 when you had the era of the KUN 26R Hilux, the D40 Navara, the next generation RC Colorado and stuff like that. That was a big leap forward in terms of comfort, engines, ride, appointments, and you started to see a lot more people jump into dual cabs, and they became a fairly acceptable or a lot more mainstream family conveyance, especially for people who might be farmers or builders, other tradesmen. You could do your work in your dual cab during the week, and you could happily cart your kids to school or around on the weekend without too much of a drama. And then the generation that came after that, when you start to get into the PX Ranger, the current model Hilux, the new model D-Max, the the MQ Triton, the generation that followed that improved once again. The drivability got better, the comfort got better, the appointments got better, the engines got better. Another leap forward, but the big leap forward was in about 05, 06. It was just a mammoth jump. If you don't believe me, go jump in like a TF Rodeo or an MK Triton and go that back to back with either the next generation along or the current generation. It's just a huge gap. Like I remember, TF Rodeo, like I had a 2000 model TF Rodeo, and the back seat was about that far above the floor pan. Like your knees were up around your ears. It was not a comfortable vehicle to cart people around in. But modern vehicles are a lot better. So built into the market right now is a desire or a willingness and a general acceptance that dual cab utes are more mainstream and that they're a viable purchase. Even if you're not a tradesman, you're just someone who wants to, you know, the whole D-Max campaign pretty much previously, up until now, go your own way, has been about, you know, drive the kids around and then go wherever you want on the weekend in the one vehicle, kind of jack of all trades vehicle. You can take the kids around, it can be a family car, but then it can be anything else you want it to be on the weekend. So now a lot more people are looking at dual cabs just as a default. Which dual cab should I buy? And in comes the Ram Express. And intersecting with that as well is we're also towing heavier loads. We've got bigger caravans, all the dual cabs on the market pretty much, with a couple of exceptions, are pulling 3.5 tons now, or they say they can. See my other videos about their actual ability to do that. That's a topic for another day. People towing heavier loads, they want more comfort. And in comes the Ram Express at a price point that nobody really expected. I follow US trucks and their importation into Australia, and have done for many, many years. I've owned one of the Aussie F250s. I have a Ram now. And that launch of that 79,990 Ram Express was very compelling, very, very compelling, and has seen a lot of people jump into the brand. And relative to what I think anybody really expected that brand to do, Ram is selling a lot of vehicles in Australia. And what they've been selling is the DS model Ram. So what has happened is when that ASV, Australian Special Vehicles, they do the conversion through Walkinshaw, or what was HSV, through a separate division of that company, but ASV does the conversions. And what happened when they launched them, they said, here we go, the new Ram Express, 79,990, and it's the DS model Ram. Now this came at a time when Ram in the US had already launched their next generation utility, the DT Ram. And Ram in North America had said, we're going to sell the DS, the previous generation, alongside the DT. So if you don't want to buy the newest model, which is going to be more expensive, you can buy the cheaper DS. Now, why is it cheaper? It's still got to manufacture a vehicle. Yep, that's true. But the cost of development, the cost of R&D, all that cost in developing the model of the DS, that's largely been recouped for now. So they've got no intellectual property, no R&D cost really left to amortize and recoup. So they can take that cost that is embedded in the vehicle out of it, keep making it, and sell it at a lower price. Whereas the DT has to be more expensive because they've just paid all this R&D to develop this new model. There's also some new technology and safety features and other bits and pieces in it that would make it a more expensive vehicle to make. But we're going to sell the DS at this point, and we're going to sell the DT at this price point. Now that has been seen in Australia too. For those who want to take a walk down memory lane, it's circa 2006, and Nissan launches their new D40 Navara. And the D40 Navara, they want to put alongside a cheaper option. They think that they can sell more dual cabs by having the D40 Navara, which was highly rated at the time. Lots of publications rated it as the best dual cab on the market. But anyway, launched the D40 Navara. And alongside that, we're going to continue to sell the previous generation Ute, which was the D22. And you could buy the D22 Navara STR, which was the top spec of the previous generation. It had a 2.5 litre detuned engine in it. You could buy that for $32,990 drive away. There was almost a permanent special, when they relaunched the D22 alongside the D40. And the D40 mid to high spec was $39,990. So you could buy the top spec D22, or you could buy the mid to top spec, wasn't quite the top spec, but just below it, in the D40 for $40,000. So you could almost save 20%, just a bit under 20% you could save by buying the previous generation. Didn't get you the safety and a few bits and pieces of appointments that the D40 had, but you can get into a brand new dual cab for this $32,990 price point if you wanted to. Now, that put them squarely in the sights of the other manufacturers of the time, like SsangYong, who was saying, look, come and give us a go. We're a non-traditional manufacturer and we're cheaper than the mainstream brands. Nissan said, well, you can buy a mainstream brand from us, Nissan, and you can buy a previous generation Ute and it's less or equal to these other non-traditional brands like SsangYong, if you can't afford the D40, here's an alternative. And they did run them side by side for quite a number of years, the D22 and the D40. That's what Ram did, or has been doing, in the United States. So when the DS Ram launched in Australia, and a lot of people go, wow, $79,990, didn't expect it to be that cheap. That was my thoughts when it launched. Didn't expect it to be that cheap. It really was quite the compelling, got a lot of people in the door, because by that stage, the top, top spec Utes in Australia, like the Hilux, SR5 at the time, the Ford Ranger Wildtrak, they're in the 60,000. So people, the pitch was, it's only another 20% and you can get a Ram. Like, oh, okay. And subsequent to that, you've had performance vehicles, in my opinion, like the Ford Ranger Raptor launch very close to the Ram Express in drive-away pricing. So that gets people to think, well, do you want a performance? And I'm not knocking the Ford Ranger Raptor, that's a topic for another day, but if you can buy a Ford Ranger Raptor, which has a 2-litre diesel 4-cylinder, or you can buy the Ram 1500 Express with a Hemi V8. Which performance Ute do you want? Now, admittedly, you're not really comparing apples with apples, because they're very different vehicles, and the Ford Ranger Raptor is far better appointed in safety and electronics and modern features than the Ram 1500 Express is, because it's a much older vehicle. But that was a pitch that a lot of people made. Go, look, I'd take the 8 cylinders rather than 4. If that was your choice, good luck to you. If it wasn't, good luck to you as well. But anyway, as dual cab Utes got more and more expensive and have continued to do, like today we have, briefly on the market, we had the Mercedes-Benz utility. We also had the Volkswagen Amarok in very high spec, which would cost you a lot of money. Suddenly the Ram 1500 Express doesn't look that far out of money. And the other big comparison that people make, particularly in the towing space, is they say you can go and buy a Toyota 200 series Sahara, or you can buy a 1500 Laramie, and you can get top of the line 1500, top of the line Land Cruiser, and they're close in pricing. Sure, one's a petrol and one's a diesel, but if you don't like the petrol in the 1500, you can get the eco diesel, which again is comparative in price. So they're the comparisons they made and why people were drawn, and with the addition to look at, I might need a more powerful vehicle to tow with, that have seen this drive into the 1500. And I do think, despite not owning one and deciding not to buy a 1500, even with that, I do think it was a very successful strategy by ASV. And one of the big questions was, as I've said, is why did ASV launch the DS when the DT is available in North America? Very frequent question raised by lots of people online, questions at automotive journalists, questions on online forums and social media and such. Oh, ASV haven't brought in the latest model. That's true. And I suspect, although it hasn't been confirmed, but I would suspect it's reasonably obvious as to why they didn't do it. And that's because they're buying the previous model at a cheaper price point, and buying them in volume will get them even a bigger discount, and it lets them get into the Australian market at that $79,990 price point and sell a US truck that in recent times, since the F250 ceased sale in Australia, since that happened, we haven't seen a US truck at that sort of money before. So really allowed them to make a splash and drive a lot of people to the brand that wouldn't have otherwise perhaps entertained the idea of getting a Ram. If you have a look, if you go on any sort of trip, or even in your local area, you'll find 1500s pop up quite frequently. They come up from time to time. You see them. It's rare. We went down the coast and saw a lot of 1500s. You see them every day you're driving. Lots and lots of 1500s on the road. So, and the sales numbers bear that out. They've sold a lot of trucks since their launch. But that's why they've done it, I suspect. They've gone with the DS model so that they could get in that price point, which is the purpose of this video. Get to the point. Yes, this is the point. If you have been looking at the Ram Express and think $79,990, yep, I reckon I'll get one in a couple of months, or I'm going to wait till the DT comes out and then I'll jump in, I think you're about to be disappointed if you think that the DT is going to launch at the same money. Even the automotive journalists that I've read that have been spruiking the pending arrival of the DT, are pitching that it's going to be six figures. You're going to see a big jump. Now you want to be ready for that, because if you're saying, oh, you know, I hear the DT's coming, 79,990, I've got my money there, or I've got my finance ready, yep, 79,990, I'm going to buy that DT. When it launches, it's almost certainly going to see a significant price range. It's not the $2,000 jump. I might be wrong, this is only personal opinion, but the automotive literature that I've read, and you can check this out for yourself online, seems to bear this out, that you're going to see a significant jump. Now the window is closing and it's closing fast, but if you're looking to buy a 1500 Ram, now would be a good time to do it. I did ring, I saw an ad the other day, and I did ring a dealer for a friend of mine who's looking for one, and they had one in stock, and they were holding on the 70, and it was one that they do on the 79.90 drive away price, which I then passed on to a buddy of mine, and he might go and buy one. Other people are reporting that dealers' stock is exhausted. Others are saying that they've got some, that will be getting some more coming in. But in any event, the time, whether you can find a local dealer or you've got to go further afield to try and get one, the window's closing. And if 79,990 is the price point that appeals to you, I don't think you've got much time left to buy one. Now, admittedly, the DT is a much more modern vehicle. It has more safety features. It has more refinement. In all general senses, I would expect, I haven't driven the DT 1500 actually. I've driven the current model 2500 and 3500, but I haven't driven the 1500. But by all accounts, I would expect the DT to be a better vehicle than the DS. The DS isn't bad. See my reasons why I didn't buy one in another video. I won't go into that today. But yes, the DT, it has more refinement and luxury, electronics, more modern features than the DS. That's for sure, and that may be worth you paying another $10,000, $20,000 for over what the DS is selling for at the moment, and that's fine, no problem. But if you say, and this is what it'll be for me, $79,990, that's a huge stretch for me. That's a lot of money to invest in a car. But if it ticks all your boxes and there's a reason that you means for you to make that work financially, go for it, no problem at all. But if I'm looking at 79,990 and go, yeah, I can just justify that one because it ticks all the boxes and there's this reason, that reason, and that reason, yep, I think I'm okay with it. If it stretches out to 100 plus on roads, which is where a lot of people are pitching it as, particularly that's because that's where the Silverado has landed, that's going to push it well outside my comfort zone. That would be the difference between owning a Ram and not owning a Ram. There is no way I would spend $100,000. So if 80 is in reach with you, and that's your limit, or that's pushing it, that's as high as you're willing to go, I wouldn't wait for the DT. I'd probably jump in now, in my opinion. You've got to sort that out for yourself, but that's my opinion. But there's not much time left. They will be switching over, and there was always going to be the case that ASV were only going to run the DS Ram in Australia as long as they could get stock out of the US, and it was a viable proposition for them to do so, and that window was always going to end. So if you have a look at used Rams, they're selling extraordinarily well. It'll be interesting to see how that lasts. Petrol models have typically not fared well in four-wheel drives and commercial vehicles. It's particularly when they're sold side by side with the diesel. The diesel is always more highly sought after, and you can do your own research on that. You can have a look at the F250 from the early 2000s. You can have a look at the Triton V8 petrol compared to the 7.3 litre Power Stroke or the 4.2 diesel. It's not even close. You can have a look at the V6 petrol Navara compared to the D40 Navara diesel. That was, the V6 petrol was so unpopular, Nissan don't even sell a petrol variant anymore. You can have a look at the petrol Courier and petrol Bravo compared to the diesel Bravo Courier. Again, so the petrol was so unpopular, Ford and Mazda don't even offer a petrol variant anymore. You can have a look at the V6 Hilux compared to the diesel Hilux. Again, the diesel Hilux on average sells for more than the equivalent age and kilometre V6. I don't expect that long term that they will hold up on value compared to a diesel equivalent, but I might be wrong. There's certainly I would have thought the depreciation would have been harder, but demand is certainly propping it up. That's for sure. And I do think that if, in my opinion, and it's only my personal opinion, that the next few years for the people who buy the DS Ram 1500 will be quite good years in depreciation, particularly if the next model jumps by 20 grand. I wouldn't be surprised for those people who jumped on a DS Ram for $79.90 drive away just before they make the switch, that you could probably retail that, put it on the used market, even with kilometers on it, within a year, and probably sell it for the same money or maybe even higher, because the DT is going to have a big jump up, which is going to inflate the price of the previous model. An interesting case study on that is have a look at the current model Suzuki Jimny, which has a huge waiting list. You're waiting for a long time to get a Jimny, and there's a lot of dealers selling them for way over the odds. There's very little discounting done, if any, and people are selling them on the second-hand market for above their brand new price. Now, what that has done, previous to that, the current model Jimny coming out, the previous generation Jimny really wasn't selling for much at all, and they have jumped in value very considerably since the waiting list on the new Jimny has established. Now, the previous generation Jimny has basically no relevance in terms of styling, in terms of features. It's not really comparative. It's got the small Suzuki engine in it. Yeah, I suppose that's comparable. But really, in terms of vehicle, the previous generation Jimny has nothing on the current generation, nothing really in common at all. As I said, barring a Suzuki 4-cylinder engine. But the prices have jumped because people are going, oh, I really, really, really want a current generation Jimny. They look really cool. Can't get one, don't want to wait 12 months. Oh, well, the previous one's way cheaper, I'll buy that. And that does make no sense, absolutely no sense. When the PX Ranger launched, you saw the same thing. The PJ and PK Ranger sold in reasonable numbers, but in terms of reviews, it was kind of an also-ran. It was just the middle of the pack. In that generation utility, it was pretty much always Hilux or Navara that was always rated higher, and Ranger was kind of in that second tier underneath them. And then when the PX Ranger launched, it was hugely popular, and it actually inflated the price of the previous generation, even though that previous generation had nothing in common with the PX. People going, I really, really want a Ranger. I can't afford the current one. I'll buy the previous generation. It had nothing in common at all. Not even the engine. Like the current generation 3.2 litre, although you can get the 2 litre 4-cylinder now, but on its launch, the PX Ranger, that 3.2 litre 5-cylinder, had nothing in comparison with the previous 4-cylinder 3 litre, but it inflated the value because of demand for that particular car model. And we've seen the same thing with the Suzuki Jimny and with the Ram 1500 Express. That latent demand in US trucks and that lower price point below the Silverado or even something like a Nissan Titan, which is not a mainstream seller, has seen value on the 1500 remain very, very buoyant. And I would expect that to hold for the next little bit. But having said that, it's just, I don't know, I don't think long term that it's a proposition. I think that you could have bought one on launch at $79,990, keep it for 5 years, I think you'll do very well. But as time goes on, I see more and more of these 3500s, 2500s on the road and being sold in diesel. I think the gap will start to widen that and will revert to form where petrols start to lose their value at a faster rate than the diesel. But certainly for right now, in the very, very short term, I think the 1500s are a fairly good buy. And if it ticks all your boxes, didn't tick all mine, doesn't mean it doesn't tick all yours. And $79,990 is your limit. I would jump in really quickly because I think your window is closing very rapidly. I don't think it's closed, but it's only just wedged open, because once the DT is your only option, you will be paying a lot more for it. So for what it's worth, now might be the time to jump into a dealer and see what they've got for you. As I said, I don't own a 1500. There's a lot of reasons why I don't own one. You can check that video out for yourself. Would I own one? No, my reasons still remain the same. But if it is the vehicle for you and you're going to buy one at some point, especially if it's an Express, I'd probably think about doing something imminently, unless you're willing to unless you want the current model, want all the extra additional new features, and want the additional price increase. I hope this was useful for you. Thank you for watching.